will be recorded. It's also live on Facebook. Thank you to the 55 folks that are with us here in the Zoom and the 80 people that are currently on Facebook right now. This meeting will be posted along with our other meetings online and available for viewing at a later time. We will make use of the Q&A function at the bottom here. If you're on Facebook, if you want to ask a question, you need to log in via Zoom and ask your question via the Q&A. We will not answer questions via the chat, so please direct your questions via the Q&A. I will stay on afterwards and answer questions, although I have another meeting at 6 tonight, so I do have a hard stop for our Joint Facilities Advisory Committee meeting that will be starting promptly at 6 p.m. With that said, we have several agenda items this evening, most important of which will be each of our schools is going to roll out their draft of their logistics plan for how they're going to put into practice our task force's plan thus far. And they'll be rolling each of those out for the community to start getting feedback about all of those. But before we get started, I just have a few opening pieces of information. First, we did a survey over the past week asking parents for their opinions on our draft plan thus far and what they thought of it. And so I wanted to share those aggregated results with the community so you could get a sense of how the community is feeling about our plan. And let me just pull that up here. We had 1,483 responses from parents, an expected breakdown between our 4 schools where their children will be attending. If you had to decide today, which you don't, based on the preliminary plans presented by the SAU, would your child start school in person or remotely? 70% to 30% in person versus remotely. Your confidence level with the plan is presented, 6 being completely confident, 1 being not at all. A distribution that favors being moderately confident in our plan. Are you planning on using bus transportation this fall? 27% said yes, 46% said no, and 26% said maybe. That's a significant reduction from our typical bus usage. So that would indicate that our bus transportation will be used less than in the past. A question about your comfort level, and more people seem to be comfortable returning to school. There was a question about how you might be willing to volunteer, and there was a myriad of answers for that. But then 700 responses to the comment section, which were very informative, very in-depth, very opinionated in cases as well as we would expect. Very happy with both the amount of feedback and the quality of that feedback from our community. So thank you to those 1,400 or so parents that participated in that survey. Next, I'm adding to this task force a social emotional learning subcommittee as we get closer to the start of the school year. In addition to all of our other areas of focus, one missing piece has been our social emotional concerns for our students. Shilu Joshi Fliegel from the high school is now appointed to this task force. Thank you, Shilu. And she will be appointing and bringing together other social workers from our other schools to be represented as part of this planning process as we get closer to the start of school. So thank you, Shilu, for joining us. 2 last introductory things. First, our school level plans tonight are first, in my opinion, exceptional, but they're going to elicit a significant number of questions, because when we talk about logistics, we're going to immediately get lots and lots and lots of questions. So in addition to what was being presented tonight, our draft of our plan is going to be released tomorrow with many more details than what will be presented this evening. So parents and the community will have an opportunity to review that document in detail. And then also we're going to have parent information nights the week of August 10th, different nights for each school. So they won't be the same night, because Most of our parents have kids in more than one school. And so parents who have questions will have a chance to go and hear in significant detail how our reopening plan will work for their particular school. So again, the week of August 10th. I skipped over, did I share last week our survey results from our teachers? I think I did. Okay, so I didn't skip over that. This committee ought to be proud. The organization NEASC, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, which accredits all high schools and colleges in New England and boarding schools around the world, has reached out to us, and they host webinars for their members that have several thousand people that attend, and they reviewed our plan and our draft of our plan and have asked us to be the focus of one of their webinars where we go in depth with our plan thus far and answer questions from members. And so that's a feather in the cap for all of you that have helped participate in this process, because people seem to be noticing. In a related note, the draft of our plan has been downloaded over 3,500 times since it's been released. And we've had contacts from all over the country asking for copies of it. So I just want to start by saying I think we're on the right track, and thank you to everybody who's been participating this far. We still need to execute and get it done. We've got some work to do, but we're well on our way, and I want to thank you all. Our agenda will be a parent and community subgroup report from Shannon Gascoyne. I'm going to then give some updates about some changes that are being made to our plan before they're released tomorrow to give the task force opportunity for feedback. We'll go over those building level plans, gather initial feedback from this task force, and then end with Q&A. I also will have a brief medical update from the medical and science group at the end, if needed and if we have time, based on where the meeting goes. So with that, Shannon Gascoyne, if you're ready, you are able to share your screen now, and go ahead and take it away, Shannon.
All right, great, thank you. Give me just 1 second here. Get screen share going. Okay, so thank you, Adam. I'm really excited about all of the opening remarks that you just made. The parent and caregiver and community subgroup met twice since the last task force meeting, and I've received a number of emails and thoughts from parents and community members along the way as well. So before I share a summary of what I learned last week, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge and say thank you to all of the individuals in our subgroup. I mentioned early on that we have a really diverse mix of parents, caregivers, and community members involved. And even though they're all really busy juggling work and family life and their own challenges with the pandemic, they have continued to give of their time and show up at the table offering really constructive and thoughtful feedback that's evident that the rest of the task force is really hearing and absorbing. So I wanted to share that with the community. What really strikes me about this group, and I think it's worthy of everyone watching, hearing this, is that they've come to all of our meetings with the spirit that public education is not, it's here to support all of our children, so not just their individual children, but all of the children in the community. And they acknowledge that the situation we're in really stinks, and that there's not one perfect, one size fits all answer. But they genuinely want to support and partner with the SAU and all of our teachers in fulfilling this really important work. So thank you to everyone on the task force and in this subgroup. These parents and community members are just really remarkable. So I look forward to the agenda tonight and to getting some of those answers to their many questions. It sounds like many of them will be answered, so I'm going to try to go through this rather quickly. It's important to note that while parents are anxiously awaiting the release of the specific recommendations, they also made it clear that their children are also really waiting to hear how things are going to be implemented. They really want to begin processing what their new normal will look like. So this parent information night is really exciting to hear about, because those are exactly the things that are on the hearts and minds of folks right now. So the response to the plan has generally been favorable in our subgroup. Many of the questions really focus on three themes: details, equity and experience, and communication and connection. So the list of questions that we generated during our meetings is quite extensive. Many of them, I believe, will be answered today based on the agenda that was posted, and I'm sure many more questions will arise. So I'm just going to share a few slides with FAQs and areas where common themes existed. But I wanted to make certain to provide a comprehensive list of questions and concerns from our subgroup, and those have been shared in the form of meeting notes and video recordings from our meeting on the Trello boards. You all have access to those for your use. So like I mentioned, the initial impressions were favorable. We'll start with the details. So people are really interested in what specific metrics will be used to determine the shift between threat levels. How will we notify our community when there's a positive case in our schools? How will we contact trace? Will the dashboard include cases per building or district-wide? How long will the school remain closed when an infection is present? What self-reporting measures will be implemented and expected of families? How will you ensure compliance with safety guidelines? What happens when security volunteers are unable to make their shift? So parents were really clear that they're willing to help, to volunteer, to do what's needed. There were some questions around the role of volunteers when it comes to cleaning and those protocols and security. How are we going to ensure that someone in a volunteer role is able to be held to a high standard in those areas? What do outdoor classrooms actually look like? What resources are required? Is there a need for community fundraising? How will social distancing practically be accomplished? Do we have time and resources to acquire the desks that this will require? Do we have the square footage? How will you practically control the number of bodies in the classroom? So I want my child to attend school, but I've been in the school and they're already cramped. So how are we going to make that work? Obviously, community members are really interested in finding out, how much this is going to cost. Equity and experience. So what happens if a high number of families choose in-person while a higher number of staff choose distance learning? And I know that's a numbers game, and you've said that all along, but there were some questions regarding the segmentation of that choice. So if the segments work out, for the first 3 segments where we have the right mix and the right numbers, what happens if in segment 4 there's an imbalance? What's the tipping point where families or staff will no longer be given choice? What happens when there's only one staff member qualified to teach a course? I think this was touched on briefly last week. If a student only needs to be on campus for a science class, and they complete their other classes virtually. This was a question from a high school parent. So, is a hybrid model feasible in situations such as that? What will specials look like? Extracurricular programs and sports? Will my child have an opportunity to participate if they're a distance learner? Continuing on, just details like, where will lunch take place? What does recess look like? And mask, obviously a big topic. And the questions vary depending on the age of the child. But what does the enforcement culture and mask breaks look like? So at the elementary level, if a student's, being asked to wear a mask all day, what kind of disruption is that creating as we're getting used to this culture? Is there an opportunity for shorter school days if the students are, particularly the younger students, being asked to wear the mask all day? Those types of questions around the mask. So really just needing more information to make an informed decision on what their students' day is going to look like. How will social distancing be guaranteed if staff and students choose different modalities? We talked about that already. Will there be manipulatives, packets, paperwork for remote learners so it isn't all online? So some concern over, if I choose remote learning for my family because that feels best, how much screen time is my child going to have, and what other ways can we build up their educational experience without having them on the screen all day? Students on IEPs, will they receive the same services in each modality? How will we keep our students and bus drivers safe? And will tech platforms be the same across the board? Will there be training available to parents? So you've already answered that question in our opening remarks, so that's awesome. Communication and connection, you know, this has been said a number of times, but that connection with their peers and their teachers is just really important. And so parents were wondering, if they choose the online option, is it possible that early in the school year they can have some sort of in-person small group meetings, maybe outside of the school, socially distanced, just to try to build some connection with those groups. If we stagger the start times, families are interested in knowing if their children at different schools can be on the same schedule. Will there be a clear code of conduct manual available for each modality, in person and online, made available prior to decision making on 8/17? Again, this just goes to parents and students really wanting a clear picture of what the expectations and culture in each building will look like prior to making that decision on the 17th. Who will be the point of contact at the SAU or at each school building for questions leading up to 8/17? So again, it was really impressed upon us in the subgroup meetings that parents are really hoping to have some clear places that they can go for answers, because there are going to be a whole lot of questions, and so they just want to make sure there's a plan for that, and where will all the details and information be stored. Will it be on the SAU website, which can get a little cumbersome to navigate? Can we create a microsite for that? And then how heavily should parents expect to be involved if choosing distance learning? Will online lessons be comparable to in-person in terms of learning outcomes and contact? How will grading align with the 10 segments? And how will grades in progress be communicated? And then there was a lengthy discussion about our seniors. How will they form meaningful bonds with their guidance counselors in time for college applications and referrals? So that's a big one. Just really taking into consideration that these kids are facing something that is really unprecedented. I know you all are already, but I just want to share that that was a hot topic for many parents of high school students. And so with that, in closing, there are a lot of questions. Like I said, those are just sort of the ones that I heard repeated often, but I think that, you know, timely and detailed information, consistent communication and connection, commitment to equitable experiences will result in trust, patience, and partnership out in our community. That's it. That's my presentation for tonight, and I would encourage you all to spend some time with the notes on the Trello board if you're interested in a deeper dive into what we were discussing in our parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. That was very helpful, and I know you shared that presentation for us to also review and go back over. Very, very helpful, and it mirrors the feedback we got in the survey through the 700 comments that I read through. I hear those themes throughout, so thank you for that. So I have, before we get to our school level plans, I just have several updates to our plan that I want to speak about. And these represent some of the big questions that we've been debating and going over here with this group. So the first is masks. So as this group knows, we've had this discussion the past several weeks about masks, and my draft plan said masks required in yellow or orange for all students grades 5 through 12 and all staff. This is probably the hottest topic there is. There's no hotter potato right now than what to do about masks at the elementary level. And so I've heard from our science and medical group. They've been in depth with their analysis and their resources. I have read as many different scholarly articles as I could find, including all of the ones sent to me by that group. I've conferred with our nurses. They provided input through Deanna Courts to this group. And I've also read all of the many emails I've received from parents who both agree and disagree with the concept of masks, and I understand all of what they're talking about. If I'm being candid, I don't want kids to wear masks. I just don't. I'm frustrated with how it will impact our school day. But we have an obligation to make sure our kids are safe, that our staff are safe, and masks are the primary mechanism we have that we can use to ensure they will be. So for our orange or yellow status, masks are going to be required for kids kindergarten through grade 12, in addition to staff anytime they're indoors. Trust me when I say this is not what I would prefer, but it is what's right, and it is what's best for our students and for our staff. It's not going to be easy. It is going to have an impact. It will be frustrating. We will learn about it. We will, I'm sure, iterate and do better with time. And I'm mindful that we are asking parents to make a choice to send their children to school, and that they should have that choice to say, if I send my kid to school, they shouldn't have to wear a mask. But the truth is we have a responsibility beyond individual students to our school community. And so while I'm reticent to make this decision, I appreciate all of you on this committee who've helped me make it and come to this conclusion and get me there over time. I know there'll be significant conversation and feedback about this decision. What I can tell you is that I know how we start the school year is not likely how we end the school year. We're going to learn things and figure things out. The data will change, the information will change, and we'll adjust with time. Our protocols are not set in stone. But if I had to make the decision today, we would start the school year in the yellow status, and masks would be required for anyone inside the school building. There will be some who are not able to wear a mask for various reasons, medically viable and validated reasons, or for other very specific cases, but by and large, that's the direction we're going to go. Next, staggered schedules was a big part of our plan. As we've gotten into the weeds a little bit, we're finding there's less need for staggered schedules for a number of reasons, primarily being that the good work of our schools, both with our principals, their fellow administrators, and our teacher leaders who have been a part of this process over the past week, have really shown us some unique ways of scheduling our school day that remove the need for staggered schedules in most cases. High school might be a unique case, but Mike's going to talk about that when the time comes. Professional development. So we've talked about the need for professional development for our teachers. We're going to need to provide, we think, 6 days worth of PD. It is provided for all of our teaching staff. It will be paid. There's no way to require teachers to be a part of professional development and not pay them. It's the right thing to do. Obviously, they're working during those days. And so we decided to set dates for that to give our faculty plenty of warning. We cannot require anybody to attend this training either. So they're going to be made available. What we're saying on our end is we're going to be expecting teachers to do different things this year. We have a responsibility and an obligation to prepare them for that, but they can choose to participate or not. And we hope that many, if not all of them, will. And so those dates will be August 11th through the 13th and the 18th through the 20th. Those are Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, 2 weeks in a row, back to back. We have other days that normally happen in the summer that will fall around those particular dates. Ventilation. So ventilation is perhaps our greatest challenge with our reopening plans, because none of our schools have the type of ventilation we would want them to deal with this crisis. And so I'm going to need some feedback, in particular from our SAU board and the relevant constituent school boards, about how we deal with this particular issue. We know that we have future ventilation upgrades because our capital needs assessments all point out the need for upgraded HVAC systems in all of our school buildings. So we know about the need, and we can validate the need, and we can even have a rough order of magnitude cost for those needs. The question is timing and how we want to address those issues. It's complicated because a building like Wilkins, we don't want to invest a whole lot into, given that we're in the middle of research about the long-range capital needs for that school, and wouldn't want to invest in a building that might be replaced or added onto or what have you. So it's a complicated issue, and I've asked Roger Preston here to this particular meeting, just so that he's brought up to speed and knows that we're going to be looking into this about what we can do in the immediate short term to provide additional fresh air into our buildings. It's less of an issue during the warm months, but it's going to be a real issue in the fall that we need to have a plan for, and just know that, and from my view, this is the most costly by far issue that we're facing in this reopening plan. Next, just two changes to our safety status board. So red stays the same. Orange is going to be different. So orange is before was in here for priority access only, but in reading the feedback and reviewing plans from other school districts and also thinking about this a little bit, I think we need to prepare ourselves for the potential that we need to significantly limit our school on-campus population, but attempt to have all of our students access the building on a rotating basis. And so I'm going to suggest, subject to the feedback of this task force, that if we're ever in status orange, that we limit capacity to 25% of the school population on a rotating basis. In the simplest of terms, that might mean that all of our first graders access Wilkins on a Monday, but second graders come on a Tuesday. Remote instruction still happens every day of the week for our students, but their access to the physical building would be limited and based on some sort of rotation. And the purpose for that, we know, is that there are some things we can't do remotely, and if we can have access to the building for some students, it's desirable to have that ability for all of our kids to rotate through, if at all possible, even though a significant limitation on the building population. So that's a change we're including in the next iteration of the plan. And then for yellow, as I mentioned before, about masks. Masks required for all staff and students inside school buildings, period. And this, if I've heard the Science and Medical Group well, that means that social distancing should still be prioritized, but is not required inside of classrooms, because if we're wearing masks, if we can't be more than 3 or 6 feet or 10, whatever feet apart, that if we're wearing masks, that's a reasonable accommodation there. So I'll be looking for feedback on that. So before we get to our building level plans, I just wanted to ask if there's any initial feedback from those proposed changes that I have to our draft plan. I'm sure there are, I'm sure there's reaction, but I'm just curious if anyone has anything right off the bat before we get deeper into the weeds. I'm surprised to have none, but that's okay. We can circle back and come back to that at a later time. So why don't we go forward with our building level plans one by one, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the very end. So Sauhegan's going to go first. So again, to reiterate, Sauhegan's going to share, each school is going to share their logistics plan in draft format. Not all of the details will be presented here. There is a document that will be released tomorrow that has many, many more details in it. All of our principals met with their administrative teams in developing this draft. They then met with their school leadership, teacher leadership groups, and then have had faculty meetings where all faculty has been allowed to attend. And that brings us to today, which is now the opportunity for the community to hear about those plans and start providing feedback for them. So first up, Mike Berry. Mike.
Can people see the screen? All right. Okay, thanks. So, Adam, I'm especially grateful for the leadership team and the staff at Sauhegan for helping me out as a brand new principal, not overly familiar with the space of the building, not overly familiar with the traditional schedule. So this was a bit of the learning curve was pretty quick for me to kind of get myself in the mix. And some of the questions that Shannon brought up are very much the same questions that are being brought up by students and staff members at Sauhegan. And so I want to kind of emphasize that as of July 23rd, here's where we're at. And I do think this plan is going to take on some more shape as we get closer to August and we get closer to the 31st. But, some of the, the goals for us in this plan is to, stay true to our mission statement and, certainly partner with the students and the families of Souhegan High School and make sure that we are developing a plan that works and is flexible for as many people as possible. And I think the overall plan of SAU 39 allows us to kind of fit in our mission into that plan. So some of the goals that we had are very similar to the other goals of the other schools. The health and well-being of the students and staff. We're certainly focused on the seniors and the graduation requirements. Not that we're not focused on 9th and 10th graders, but we have more time. We have more time with them to get them where they need to be. But with this year, we certainly are focusing on our seniors and making sure that they have their requirements and they're in a good place to move on to the next phase of their life. We especially looked at choice in the anchoring adults and the advisory and the communication between our school and the students and families of Souhegan. Here's where we're at with a proposed weekly schedule. And I want to talk through this just a little bit. You're going to see a proposed gold day and black day. And then on a Wednesday, we are kind of looking at an independent learner and support day. And this day, Adam, as you started talking about the amendments to the orange, this kind of looks like a natural orange day for us. Like the building will be open, but we are going to try to make sure that we are servicing the students that we need to service in certain classes and in certain populations and cohorts. It is definitely a school day. Students will have access to the campus. School will be in session. Teachers will have office hours and be working with students primarily remotely, but we will be supporting kids through Saver Support. We might offer a chemistry lab. That keeps coming up to be the example on that, like a chemistry lab that day. We might try to put the band, if we can't schedule the band accordingly to get all the kids at one place, but Wednesday could be the day where the band kids come up and they have a day together. Different co-curriculars could be involved on that day. So we are definitely looking at shaping that day as making sure we are connecting kids to this building that maybe, not able to connect in certain circles throughout the rest of the week. As you look down here on the slide, it's basically for people who might not be overly comfortable coming to school when there's going to be 300 to 400 kids in the building. They might be here like where there's a little bit less, and we still want those kids to have the connection to school. So that's kind of the rhythm of the week that we have right now. This is where it gets a little bit where we're trying to control the numbers of people who are on campus at one time. And we are going to propose kind of two schedules like as of today. And this is kind of our preferred one, but there's some logistics that we have to kind of really work through about getting kids here and having the campus accessible to the kids who need to be here at certain times. And so what we've kind of taken a look at, if you notice, is we're going to schedule 9th and 10th graders throughout the day, and we're looking to run classes essentially 7:30 to 3. And we know that some transportation issues, going to 3 o'clock could be an issue, but we still want to dive a little bit deeper into the survey of how many students will be requiring transportation to and from school based on the results that we're having. And so that's some of the stuff that we still want to parse out. We're not ready to kind of shelve this plan and not try to put it into action based on the information that we have. And we still feel like we have 4 weeks before we have to kind of get something like absolutely firmed up. And we want to try to get there as quick as we can, but we still have time. But 9th and 10th graders, we would have on campus in certain waves, as you can see, according to the schedule, where 10th grade classes would start at 7:30, and then the 9th grade classes and teen classes would start at 9. 11th and 12th graders, if you look in that far column, they'd access the building when they need to access the building. So Shannon, that kind of goes to the question, if they just have a science class and that's all they need, they come for science. And if they can transport themselves to and from, we can do that. 10th graders, if they don't need to access the building the whole day because the way their schedule shakes out and it's individual and they can get transportation to and from, we're going to be really flexible about how we work with kids and families in this schedule. This also helps accommodate the other questions and concerns with the amount of choice. Like if you have staff, teaching staff that is maybe not overly comfortable being on campus during a yellow, phase, our classes are going to be, they're going to be in place where it doesn't matter if you're going to be remote or you are on campus. There is definitely some flexibility and fluidity between those two worlds, and I'll talk about that momentarily. We feel like it can be managed, and we will take advantage of Google Classroom. Here, I'm going a little bit quick, and this will be more information in the other documents. I want to be mindful of the other principals who are a bit more long-winded than me. I want to make sure they have time, especially Anna. So if you look at, what the learning experience could look like, you have the on-campus learner on the left, and we would run classes. Whether you're in school or not in school, you would be on a schedule. If you're remote or you're in, we would still be running a schedule. That's a little bit different than how, some people might envision it. And we would have longer periods in between classes. We would have a certain pathway, and this is going to be a bit of a bear, and it's going to be a major culture shift for the students of Souhegan High School to have to move around the building in certain ways. But we are going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. You can see a little bit about how the teachers will be available. And, when kids don't have classes, there will be spots in rooms around the school where they'll have access to, where they can set up and they can work on their remote classes or work on their VLAS classes. Or if they need, they have a free period and they have to stay on campus, they'll be there. And then you see on the right, about what the expectations of students who are remaining at the house. And they're still going to have access to the faculty and staff, and they'll have access to the building when they want, but there'll be some expectations there for them. Some of the things that we just don't have exactly figured out, and then we have some time is, protocols for our own building, about contact tracing, space, we'll monitor campus, of students if the teachers are remote. There is going to be some coverage stuff there if that's the case, and we just haven't really declared and defined who's going to be here and who's not, but we will figure that out. And at the end of the day, all the students are going to be welcomed to the campus as they're scheduled, and we will sort that out. That's our obligation. Talk to the leadership team. We can sort through that. It's just going to take some time. And I wish I was more helpful. I still get lost walking around the building. If I don't have a guide, I still take a wrong turn and I end up in the wrong place. And so like I said, my learning curve is up there, but we'll sort through that. And then our timeline, I have a faculty meeting with the Souhegan group and staff on Monday, and then there's a district-wide one and a school board meeting, I think, and then an information meeting that will be very telling and informative by that week. We'll have this more shaped up. I know this probably creates a lot of questions for people, but it is progress, and we're getting closer to having something in place that works for as many people. But please know there's an overwhelming amount of information out there. There's an overwhelming amount of data and opinions and factors, and please know that this is kind of an all-day, everyday thing for us, and that we're working as hard to make this as feasible and doable and safe for everybody at the high school. And we desperately want to have a good 2021 school year, and we think it's possible even given the circumstances. So appreciate it. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Mike. Any brief questions for Mike? We've got 3 others to get through, and I want to leave plenty of time for questions from the community, but are there any initial questions for Mike? All right, Delaney and George, I'll be particularly interested in your feedback when we get to the end. So maybe think about what your first reactions are, and I'd love to hear them before we end today. Next, Amherst Middle School, Dr. Bethany Bernasconi.
Perfect. Let me just get to set. Terrific. I'm going to echo a lot of the same thoughts Mike has already shared out. Just that this has been a really collaborative effort of kind of our leadership team, taking feedback from the task force. We've had a series of great meetings this week, sharing out with teacher leadership and with our faculty today. So there's a lot of things here still to process, but I am confident that we're making good strides forward, and that we've got a plan that has some simple and elegant solutions that are going to allow us to really, as the situation changes over the course of the school year, and really meet the needs of our entire community of learners, from faculty and staff to parents and students across the board. So there's been a few founding principles that have really guided all of our thought process in this work. The strong need for social emotional connections and taking care of the needs of both our students and our staff. This primary concept of flexibility, so that everyone can make choices based on their comfort level, and that we can support those. Preserving time for collaboration, professional learning, planning. We're asking our teachers, and we're asking everyone to take a step outside of their comfort zone. We're all going to be stretching over the course of this year, so we've got to support that with time and structures for collaboration. Really maintaining some personalized learning, maintaining time for interventions and reteaching extensions. Really making sure that if we're trying to make sure that all students have the opportunity to make a year's worth of growth, how can we personalize our learning and our instruction across the board this year to really make sure we're supporting each learner in what they need. It's not a one-size-fits-all, just as our kids aren't a one-size-fits-all. So we really want to make sure that we're tailoring our efforts wherever is safely possible to meet the needs of the individual. Another really core concept that I think has gotten a lot of press across the country, but we have a strong belief that integrated arts are a really important part of our students' experience, and trying to maintain those in a really robust way in our system. And then underlying it all is a healthy and safe learning environment. So in our plan, we're erring a little bit more on the side of caution to begin with, some more strict structures to begin with, because we can always loosen them up as conditions improve. So it's better to start from a more cautious place. And the schedule and changes we've designed are intentional in that they will allow us to shift, hopefully pretty seamlessly, from one modality to the next as the situation changes over the course of the year, without major changes to staff and students. So the key strategies that we're using to address these principles are our Launchpad as our anchoring adult, how we're structuring our teacher teams. I'm going to review a few schedule modifications with you, talk about the possibilities of what operating on a segment-based school year will offer for our students, and EAGLE, and how we're going to address our smart lunch. So first of all, over the past year, Sue Sprinkle, one of our teachers, has been on sabbatical designing what we've come to call our Launchpad. It's our version of an advisory program, and its mission is really to connect students and adults in a meaningful manner to allow all of our Eagles a greater ability to access their potential. So we are connectors of people. This is the foundation of what we do as educators, and this will offer an opportunity to be an anchoring adult for our students and our families over the course of the year. So these will be small groups that students will be assigned to. Our original intention was to make these multi-grade level groups. We're still committed to that, but in this coming year, so that we can really increase our health and safety and reduce mixing of students across the building, we've decided to pause that and to make them single grade level groups, and return to that idea when the conditions warrant later down the road. So this will be an anchor for students and families through a dynamic year. It will be a consistent point person. Your anchoring adult may not solve every problem, but they're going to connect students and families to the resources they need to solve problems if that arises. This will be a consistent point of connection. All students will have a Launchpad, and even students who are remote will have an opportunity to zoom into their Launchpads. We really want to connect both our remote students and our on-campus learners so that it's not two totally different experiences, but we're really all one community of learners regardless of where we're learning from. The second strategy we're using are our teacher teams. I know there's a lot of text on this slide, but in order to create flexibility and redundancy, we're creating teams of teachers. So sections of students are going to be divided amongst the teachers in that grade level or in that content area. So, so for example, you can see here on the left-hand side. So currently we have 3 fifth grade STEM teachers. So it will be 3 STEM teachers plus 1 additional certified teacher from our building. So there will be 4 STEM teachers in 5th grade, and a student might have any one of those 4 teachers over the course of the year. So really working in that first segment to build community and connection and start to develop relationships across the board will be really important. What this will allow us to do is a few things. One, it allows for flexibility. So as our numbers change, some of these teachers will be teaching remotely and some of these teachers will be teaching in person. Based on our current numbers, this allows us in person to prioritize safety and smaller class sizes. So our class sizes right now, and again, it's just preliminary data, but are looking between around 15, 20 at the high end. So that helps to create some more space in our classrooms to help with that social distancing and all of those pieces. So for example, if you're a 5th grade student, you may start the year with one particular STEM teacher, and that's going to be determined by the number of on-campus learners. And then over the course of the year, you may stay in the next segment with that same teacher, or you may shift to a different teacher. So that's both based on our numbers of online learners and on-campus learners. And when conditions warrant and are safe enough for us to consider some mixing, it also allows us to differentiate a little bit. So perhaps we might create some different groupings across that teacher team to really help kids get some extra remediation or reteaching of particular concepts that they might be struggling with, or to create another group that can do some extension and some enrichment opportunities. So it allows us to flex across those teacher teams as it's safe and we're able to do so. In 7th and 8th grade, so in 5th and 6th, we've really tried to divide the school a little bit into a lower school and an upper school based on developmental readiness of our students. So in 5th and 6th, it's still a STEM teacher and a humanities teacher. In 7th and 8th, our teacher teams are across the grade level. This does not mean that we are mixing 7th and 8th grade students, but instead we're looking at our upper school ELA team, which consists of both 7th and 8th grade teachers who will all be teaching 7th grade sections and 8th grade sections. And again, this teacher team will allow us for some really strong collaboration, but it also really supports the flexibility and the choice of both our teachers and our families. So you can imagine that this drives some schedule changes for us. When we're looking at our schedule, there's a few common pieces here. So our guiding principles were really to make a common schedule across the building and make it simple. That was one of our pieces of feedback from remote learning last year, is that the schedule was too complicated. So we've really tried to simplify our schedule so that it works for both in-person on-campus learners and remote learners as well. We'll follow the same schedule. The schedule is also created in such a way that we can be more conservative in our safety practices and how we group students. And as situations improve, we can also open up to create more opportunities for students and diversify their experiences. It was really important for us to preserve time for interventions and enrichment, extra help, time for social emotional learning, our integrated arts, and I'll show you a little bit about our midday smart lunch. So here's a sample schedule of a 5th grade. So we're on a modified block schedule. The day begins in Eagle, and that's our opportunity for reteaching, intervention, enrichment. When students arrive at school, they will enter the building through designated doors that are closest to their Eagle classroom. That Eagle classroom will be also their launch pad room. So that eliminates some movement throughout the day right there. And it also gets our class size in those rooms down to under 15 students per room because of how our small group launch pads, our anchoring adults, are set up. From there, they may be remoting into their interventions across the building. Special ed interventions, as much as possible, will take place face-to-face for on-campus learners, but it allows students a place to access resources within the building from a set location. We'll also be able to have our online learners remote into the interventions, extra help, group projects, and things that they need during that time. In 5th grade, we have STEM classes and we have humanities classes. So again, we have a modified block here. So you can see on Monday, for example, with this 5th grade example, you'll see core 1 in both the 2-hour morning block and the 2-hour afternoon block. So that means that that group of students will stay with that same teacher throughout the whole day. This eliminates mixing throughout the building and exposure to lots of other students. So one day you might have your humanities class and the next day you might have your STEM class. That also frees up teachers to have a lot of choice with how to break up that time, provide those task breaks, take students outside, to take advantage of some of the outdoor classrooms we're looking to provide for them. 1 day a week for each grade level is designated for integrated arts. This allows our integrated arts classes to really have an in-depth experience with our students. So right now we're looking at those 2-hour blocks. And again, we're looking for feedback from our integrated arts teachers to help us design this time. But students will have an opportunity to participate in integrated arts over the course of the year, but they'll have one designated day to do this. The middle part of the day is that lunch recess, is really what we're calling smart lunch. The idea being that 45 minutes for students is set aside for lunch and recess. So if you want to get technical to the minute, we could say it's a 30-minute lunch and a 15-minute recess, but there's flexibility on that because if students have their lunch, we all know how fast some students eat, and some students might want to take more time, but it really allows some flexibility there so that they have a good break in the middle of the day. It would be our hope that this could be outside. We could have math breaks here, that they'll have an opportunity to do that. That right now, as we open, we're going to plan on that happening in their classroom. So our support staff will be helping to support that time so that teachers can also have a lunch. The other 45 minutes of that time is what we're calling a directed study. So that might be a time where across the building, our students are working on Dreambox Math or some other supplemental instructional pieces to help make sure that we're really giving them the experience they need. Again, we're looking for a group of teachers to help us design this time. And last but not least, that's also a time where our mental health professionals in our building are going to push into those classrooms and really reinforce those social emotional learning topics, check in on students, really have some small class conversations, and again, really making sure that we're taking care of the whole child. Sorry, I think I'm talking really fast. In 7th and 8th grade, it's a really similar model, except that instead of staying with one teacher over the course of the day, students will have 2 cores a day. So in this example, on Monday, you might have your core 1 might be your science class and core 3 might be your math class. And then on Wednesday, you might have your social studies and your English language arts class. But again, it achieves much the same purpose. It eliminates a lot of shuffling across the day and really helps us to cut down on potential cross-contamination. And again, the schedule is designed so that if we eventually down the road, when things improve, if we want to create opportunity for students to have multiple cores a day, we do have that opportunity built right in here. This is the same format that our online learning will also follow. That way we can really connect across the building and across really wherever it is that you're learning from. EAGLE. So EAGLE is a time for intervention, extension, reteaching. Again, I think I already talked much to this, that students will have that EAGLE Launchpad time. So this will keep our class sizes really small for this. And we'll have students remote in across the building to services that they need. So imagine you go in on Monday, you know that your math teacher is going to pull a small group together. So it's got a Zoom ready to go for you. You hop on, get the extra help you need, and have time to continue working and planning out those pieces that you need. This is really an individualized learning time for students to get whatever support they need, whether it's an intervention or an extension and an enrichment opportunity. And again, this is another area where we're looking for our faculty and our staff to weigh in and give us some ideas, because they've got a ton of creative ideas with what we can do with this time and make it really meaningful for students. I think I talked to all of this already in the schedule. So our smart lunch, that hour-and-a-half block of time across the school, that also allows sufficient time if we need to disinfect classrooms between groups of students. And really, again, looking at the whole child, making sure we're meeting all of their needs to make sure they've got enough time for lunch, making sure they've got time for recess and some downtime, making sure that they have time to have their instructional needs met and supported, and that we're taking care of that social emotional learning component as well. Lots of pieces still to figure out. We're working on logistics. Right now we're in the process where we've replaced some of our trap tables, which are harder to configure in socially distant ways. Fortunately, it was part of our furniture upgrade plan that was approved in the budget last year. So we've already been able to continue move forward with that. We're looking at different kinds of tents and things like that for outdoor, extending our outdoor classrooms, some things that have signs so that we can get out of the wind when we need to and really take advantage of our beautiful campus. You know, increasing access points outside for internet and those sorts of things, and really making sure that we've got all of the physical pieces that we need in order to be effective and really create safe spaces. So lots of pieces we're still working on, but know that we can solve them. It's just we're trying to prioritize which pieces we roll out first. And we're just really engaging our staff at this point with decisions and helping us design the best experience possible for our learners, both remote and on campus. So it's been terrific. It's gonna be a great school year. It'll be a school year that challenges us in lots of new ways, but we are up for the challenge.
Thank you, Bethany. Very, very well done. Mike has a lot to learn from you. Kim Starkey, you're next from Mount Vernon Village School.
All righty, here we go. Yeah, it's really hard to follow Bethany, but I'll try to do my best. Here we go. So just like the other schools mentioned, we have goals that really kind of drive everything we do. We want to make sure that we maintain a safe and comfortable environment for everyone. We certainly want to make sure that each student makes at least 1 year of academic growth. So really rigorous instruction is going to be a part of what we do this year and every year, and at the same time making sure everybody stays safe. And in order to do that, we have to all embrace flexibility and creativity in our schedules and the way that we tackle in-person learning and also remote learning. And more than anything, I just want teachers to be really excited about what they do so that kids are excited to come to school and excited to learn. Obviously, safety is going to be paramount in every one of our schools. The great thing about the teachers in Mount Vernon and all of the schools is that they are very excited to make sure that we normalize masks, and we teach kids about social responsibility, and we teach them that the reason why we're doing this is to keep everybody safe. You know, we talked about, I have my little Minnie and Mickey Mouse masks that I picked up yesterday. We talked about having really fun masks for the kids and just kind of making it something that we do. In terms of mask breaks, they will definitely be built in. Teachers recognize that kids need a break from masks, and they do as well. So we talked about making sure that teachers have access to outdoor spaces basically all day long. So whenever they feel the need to bring the kids outside so that they can take a break, we certainly will do that. Our school hours are going to be 8:35 to 3:15, just the standard school hours, because of the fact that we got that feedback from parents regarding bus transportation. We know now that we only need to have one bus run, which means that we do not have to have a staggered start. What's really great is that we have at Mount Vernon, we have all exterior classroom doors, with the exception of one classroom, but we made some modifications for that. So when students arrive to school, there will be lots of adults in the parking lot directing students and letting them know where they have to go. And the classroom teachers will be waiting at their exterior doors, and the students will be able to be ushered right into the classroom to avoid being to avoid standing in line. And so that will help to prevent large clusters of kids gathering in our hallways and in the main entrance. K students, however, will be meeting their teachers at the front doors. I think, at least initially, it's kind of scary for the kids to be walking around the building. So we certainly want to be able to have K students meet their teachers and feel comfortable. I think I said previously, we're going to basically have an all hands on deck approach when it comes to arrival and dismissal. And we need to be able to do that, especially while we're establishing our systems and routines. In terms of detailed information regarding arrival and dismissal, I think we pretty much have worked that out. But I definitely want to be able to show parents with a video so that you can actually look at, and we talked about, the staff talked today about doing some simulations and kind of showing people what exactly that would look like for students who are being dropped off, where buses are going to go, and where walkers will be directed. So those videos will certainly be forthcoming. So what we're doing with our classrooms is we're going to separate children into grade bands, and the grade bands will consist of K2, 3, 4, and 5, 6. And the reason we're doing that is twofold. One, because we don't want to mix large groups of students together. Also, because we have really small class sizes, we wanted to be able to capitalize on that with regarding to meeting students' individual needs. So I think typically at the school, students have been exposed to an intervention block, and we're rethinking that a little bit. We're gonna call intervention, we're gonna rename it to WIN. And WIN really stands for what I need. And that's comprised of both remediation and enrichment for students. And so within those grade bands, we do have that flexibility for a student, let's say, who's in grade 3, who's ready for some vertical acceleration. That student would be able to maybe move during the WIN block between his or her classroom and a 4th grade classroom where something is going on with a small group of students. Obviously, masks involve social distancing, to be able to really accelerate that learner. One of the concerns that we have, as an aside from the reopening, is that a lot of times there are high achieving students who experience low growth, and that's something that we really want to reverse. We want to make sure that we continue to challenge the high achieving students. And at the same time, obviously, we want to make sure that we provide timely and intensive support for students who have a lot of unfinished learning and need a lot of extra support. So there's that. In terms of special education, our special education teachers are amazing. We have only 3 of them at Mount Vernon, so they will be tackling both in-person instructional delivery and also remote instructional delivery. Like I said, because we have 3, we are going to assign those 3 special education teachers to an individual grade band based on the fact that we have more of a need in grades 5 and 6. We just have more identified students. There might be a little bit of sharing involved just so that we can make sure that we comply with all the IPs, all of the 504s, and then we have enough time for evaluations and things like that. We're going to try to make sure that all of our placement meetings happen via Zoom or whenever that's possible, so that we can just reduce the number of people coming into the building. Our speech and OT services will be delivered both in person and remotely, just like they were in the previous school year. When it comes to anchoring adults, obviously this is central to any grade level. I think maybe even more so at the elementary level, especially for our students who have never had an experience in school before. So I met with the entire staff today and they were wonderful. They are completely invested in every single one of our students. There are certainly students who will have their classroom teacher as the anchoring adult, but then there are also relationships that have been formed and that are pretty solid. So we will work together to develop a list of anchoring adults and the students who will be assigned to them. And that list will be disseminated no later than August 24th. So here's an example of a 3rd and 4th grade schedule. This is the 3-4 band. If you notice, I guess I didn't take that out. So we have some special educators and a paraprofessional who work very closely with grades 3 and 4. So I kind of worked together with Mr. Blake, and we designated them the 3-4 special educators and paraprofessional. And so it will look very much like what the typical schedule looks like. We didn't change any of the specials times. We wanted to make sure that we had a pretty hefty block for language arts and also for STEM activities. So grades 4 through 6 are actually departmentalized. So students typically have one humanities teacher and one STEM teacher. However, in grades K through 3, those classrooms are always self-contained. So if you notice, the blocks are pretty big, and that is because with language arts, in with math as well, in grades K through 3, we'll be threading in social studies and science and making it so that we take an integrated approach and it's more authentic learning versus just having a designated block. then it's really kind of the same model in 4 through 6. You'll notice that that there are 50 minutes designated for recess and lunch. So students will be having lunch in their classrooms, and then they will be able to go outside and play as long as weather permits. We have three recess locations, and they will be rotated. However, today, I took a walk around the school several times with one of our custodians, and we kind of figured, based on the number of kids, we might only need 2 recess locations, but just know that they will be rotating and students will be able to have a great time at recess, and we know how important that is for them to stay active. So in terms of specials, we wanted to make sure that we have a regular special schedule, just like Bethany talked about. This is really, really important to make sure that we don't forget about the integrated arts. Our students will have Spanish and PE 3 days a week, or Spanish or PE 3 days a week. We're going to rotate. And this will actually, so 3 days they'll have either Spanish or PE, and then the next 2 days, Thursday and Friday, they'll have either music or art. And this is actually really great because it will allow the teachers, because they'll have the students for multiple days in a row, it will allow them to go a little bit deeper in the content. So that's kind of exciting. And as always, Mount Vernon has a number of homeschool families, and we will continue to work with homeschool families to be able to provide specials. And I think I already went over this with lunch and recess. And I should also mention too that recess will be divided into 2 groups. So there'll be a K2 group and a 3-6 group. So K2 will have recess while 3-6 has lunch, and then the reverse will be true. In terms of remote learning, so we have a limited number of staff members in our building. We have 14 classrooms and exactly 14 classroom teachers. And we have 2 amazing interventionists who already offer instruction to all of the grade levels. And so our amazing interventionists have agreed to tackle remote learning. They are going to have some support. They're going to need support because it's definitely a heavy lift for them to to teach all of the grade levels in their content area, which would be either ELA or humanities and math STEM. So we are breaking up remote learning into 3 bands, just like in the classroom, K2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we have a set schedule in terms of how many core instructional sessions each remote teacher will be expected to deliver. And then also there'll be multiple opportunities for extra support, one-on-one support, small group support, all remotely. And then we'll definitely be utilizing online programs such as Dreambox Math, Mystery Science, and Google Classroom will be our main platform. And so with remote learning specials, I will tell you that we will be offering technology remotely as a special, and our amazing technology teacher is going to be in charge of that. When it comes to art, music, all things SEL, and aside from like if remote students need to meet with a guidance counselor, because they most certainly can do that, but just the SEL lessons and PE, those specials would be accessed on demand for parents and for students, and they will not be monitored and they won't be graded for remote learners. So we will have, I guess, like a library of resources and links, and that will be accessible to all parents of remote learners. And then, yeah, these are just kind of getting in the weed things. We're just going to try to make sure that we mitigate any spread of any virus, and we're just going to ask all students to have individual supplies. I know this is a question that a lot of elementary parents have, because I got a lot of emails about the supply list. And so I will tell you that our teachers are working on their supply list. They're modifying it to reflect individual needs. And yeah, we're going to be using outdoor learning spaces. We're going to be setting up some outdoor classrooms, and teachers will be able to sign up for them to use them as much as possible. And that's pretty much it. I guess I'm I guess I'm probably one of those long-winded people Mike talked about. I have more details, so stay tuned, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, Kim. And we will have opportunity for questions at the end and also review Mike's scorecard, fellow principals. Anna, bring up the rear and do a good job for us. Go ahead, Anna.
Oh, there we go. First, you're going to hear a lot of similar themes. All the principals have pretty much been meeting multiple days a week to have shared vision in the way that we're looking at things and the way that we're communicating them out. So I think that's going to be clear. Lastly, before I get started, just to the leadership team at Clark Wilkins, Kathleen Murphy, Kristen Morgenstern, and Karen Rimmel. I think that there's a lot of out-of-the-box thinking in order to have put this plan together for what you're going to see, and for us to really be charged from Adam to really have fresh eyes as we're taking a look at how we really can provide a safe learning environment for students, and to really be able to push and get that academic rigor in our program. So with that, our goals are very similar: creating a safe and healthy, supportive environment, ensure all students make at least 1 year of growth, and flexibility and creativity. And I think you're going to see that with our plan. We've talked a lot about the mask. We are going to create the normalization of wearing masks. We have been talking about mask breaks. We still have more logistics to go on that, whether that's 5 minutes an hour, outdoor opportunity. I just spent time with Ellen and our outdoor classroom committee today. We are building our outdoor classroom at Clark in August. Thank you to the PTA. We're also looking to really leverage that and have the potential to use the funds for the PTA to actually create our 2 outdoor classrooms at Wilkins also. So we are going to do the best possible to really leverage outdoor education. We are looking to really educate the students on best hand washing and social distancing practices. And we all know we give that task, we raise that bar, we know that we can have the students meet those expectations. And, obviously we are going to implement whatever the guidelines and expectations that the district moves forward. We had, and we do, the document that is going to be shared with you tomorrow, we took out the 4 slides. We have a detailed arrival and dismissal plan. We're really looking to allow for that physical distancing and to have safe movement of 500 plus kids in 2 different buildings. So the maps are on the documents that's going to be shared tomorrow, but as Kim said, and maybe we can test out who's going to provide the best videos, Kim, but we are going to provide videos and explanations for everyone, and we'll send that out ahead of time so we can answer any questions before then. So moving into what is going to be a very different look at education at Clark Wilkins, the structure, and a very different look at the actual physical space. So our in-person instruction teams, we're going to take a look at pods. Kathleen had a pretty awesome thought as we were trying to figure out how we were going to best provide this education. So we took a look at our teachers as a whole and all the certifications that our teachers held in order to be able to provide the structure that we're calling our pods. And in a pod is going to be a classroom, a homeroom classroom of 10 to 15 students. And each one of these classrooms in the pod is a full-size classroom. The anchoring adult for every single student is going to be that homeroom teacher, but on their pod, they are going to have 4 adults, 3 teachers, and a paraprofessional. Each classroom will be a part of that 3-person pod, and I'm going to give a little diagram here in a minute. with the maximum number in those 3 classrooms of 30 to 45 students. And those numbers are based on the preliminary data of 28% of our students going remote. All instruction is included. That special education and interventions, everything occurs within that pod. Students will not be mixing in the other pods. So if you take a look, somewhat of a busy screen, but if we focus, let's say we focus on 2nd grade. To date, we had 127 students enrolled. If we have 28% of our students that are going to go remote, then that means we have about 102 students in 2nd grade that are coming in person. So that would mean that for a 3-teacher pod, there would only be 34 students spread out amongst those 3 classrooms. So that's 11 students per that classroom. So as you can see, kindergarten has 3 pods, 1st grade has 2, 2nd 3, 3rd 2, and 4th has 3. So there also, as you can see at the bottom, there would also be an assigned remote classroom teacher to each grade level. So if we looked a little closer, the day in the life, so say we stuck with 2nd grade, this is a projected opportunity for a daily schedule. The beauty of this is even the special ed teacher, that's a certified classroom teacher that has a special education certification. So within this, which you could almost call it your own small school, the teachers really have the luxury of, I know I heard Kim say, reaching the students at the other end, offering small group and enrichment. But you can certainly see for any services and interventions that there's that opportunity to do small groups. Within a pod, those teachers can decide when they have recess, they can decide when they have lunch, they can decide when they are going to have their specials. So there's the beauty and flexibility within the pod structure. Next up, in order to, because of the classroom space that we will need in order to have our program work, all students in person, the remote, we're having specialists will be remote. That includes art, music, library, PE, and guidance. And again, this year, guidance will be a special because we know of the need for direct SEL instruction. So this could be asynchronous or synchronized special offering. We're still pursuing that, and they would have access to Google Classroom to come into the classroom with a paraprofessional helping with the direct instruction. Lunch and recess. So lunch, as we just mentioned, lunch is going to be in the classroom. That is signed up per pod. So those 35 to 45 students will have lunch in their classroom. We do have 3 lunch recess paras. I guess I would throw that out there to the community right now. We will be putting that out on AppleTrack and looking to hire those 3 lunch recess paras that can help with assisting with the lunches into the classroom and helping with cleanup afterwards. So with recess, again, per pod, we are going to have 3 separate times that you can sign up for, 3 separate locations. That could be the equipment, that could be the outdoor classroom, that can also be the fields. You would sign up for a time, and with your pod, there would be a teacher and a para in that pod covering those recesses, and certainly looking into rotating the possibility for those recesses. And again, as I mentioned, that there is a designated remote teacher for every depending on the amount of students, we may need additional classroom remote teachers. The teacher doing remote, they are responsible for all content and small group instruction for the remote classroom. And if there's any student that is remote with special ed services, they would be receiving those special ed services remotely. I just want to thank also the staff. With this model, I think we figured that there are 20 people that are in some way making a shift or a move or a different teaching role this year, and people being willing and flexible, and knowing that in this pod, there's some pretty exciting opportunity for instruction, intervention, and really leveraging some pretty impressive teachers and skill sets. To the teacher leadership and para reps, we met. We're going to meet again after this, and the full staff. All of the teachers have had, we put together a 9-page logistics document. Teachers and paras have been giving us feedback all day on it. For us, there's still many things that we need to look at, but just knowing with the feedback and suggestions that we continue to look to mitigate safety while really offering a robust instruction. So thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, principals. Again, just to reiterate, the draft document being released tomorrow will have a lot more details in it than what was presented. We will also post these presentations on our website for the public to review and for the task force to review. And we'll continue to make sure we have all of our materials available for everyone to review. So with that, I'm going to turn it to questions of the task force. Amy Facey is first. Go ahead, Amy.
Hi, everybody. So first of all, I truly appreciate the differentiations that you all made between districts, buildings, grades, and it's really impressive the obvious amount of work that has gone into this planning, and especially the attention on and focus on safety. I did also appreciate hearing the focus on student growth. And as a board member, I will be looking for specifics on how that will be measured, and how we will ensure equity in terms of grading and reporting between remote and in-person learning. So I'm not asking for an answer on that now, because that's a pretty big question, but that's something that I think we'll need to have some more meat on the bone for that. I also am very interested in the professional development for teachers for remote and in-person learning. And I think it's great that we have those 6 days designated at the beginning of the year. I would suggest that in order to truly have success in professional development, we need to have a sustainability plan for that and make sure that we have programs in place as we go through the year, because we're going to learn a lot as we progress. So I'd want to make sure we have that in place as well. So those weren't really questions to be answered tonight, but I just wanted to bring those up. And Mike, specifically as a Sohegan board member, I'll have a lot of questions on the logistics, and I know you don't have it all worked out yet. So I'll be looking forward to how you're going to manage all of the moving parts that come with a high school schedule. But I think it was a really good first draft, and I like the creativity and the way of minimizing the number of students in the building. I think that's a really smart approach. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Seeing no one else with their hand up, I've got 4 quick clarifications that have come up. First, the professional development for our teachers, they will have the option to be remote or in person. So that's a question staff have had already, is that we'll have it in a hybrid modality for our staff. We've also are planning to have a PD. We're toying with the idea of having a full professional development day at the end of each segment or the end of every other segment to provide that ongoing PD during the school year. I failed to mention that before. And then also the parent info nights I mentioned the week of August 10th. Those also will be a blended modality. They might be only remote, but we'll look into that. They'll definitely have a remote option, but there might also be an in-person option as well for parents. But we've not talked about that, and even just speaking about it now, it seems to make sense that that would just be fully remote. But again, we haven't talked about that yet. So great question, who presented that. I've also answered, there's been 25 questions via the Q&A, and we've answered all but one so far. And so we'll keep going through those. Stephen O'Keefe and then Shannon Gascoyne.
Great, thank you. First of all, I also want to echo exactly what Amy said. Thank you very much for your hard work. It's summertime, and this is no easy task in front of us. And you guys clearly have put pens to paper there and starting to address the questions that I know as committee members we've been entertaining, not only from our communities but also from our subcommittees, and starting to get into the weeds. This question is actually for Kim, and I'm going to actually stay pretty high level. When you talked about sort of the banding of grades and being connected, and working in such a small school, what does it look like if one of those or two of those individuals were remote, and the capacity for substitutes being infused into that? Like, what does that physically look like? So is a third grade student going to go into a fourth grade classroom to be instructed on mathematics, and is a fifth grade student going to go into a sixth grade classroom to learn science when we have 50% of the teaching staff at home?
Okay, so I'll just tell you based on where we are right now. So where we are right now, we only have two core content teachers who have elected to teach remotely. So all of the classroom teachers that we have right now are going to stay with their grade level. There actually is we have minimal change right now. If it so happens that a teacher elects to go remote, then we certainly will have to make some adjustments. Right now we have really small class sizes, so we have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to planning and when it comes to being very familiar with the curriculum. We're going to have teachers plan for their grade level, but we're also going to, and we have built in time for them to have that cross grade level collaboration so that teachers know kind of what their partner teachers are covering. And so in terms of what it will look like if a teacher elects to go remote, like in an upcoming segment, I mean, honestly, we just have to readjust. We might have class sizes that are a little bit larger. I don't foresee that happening just based on the feedback from teachers, but obviously I can't tell the future. So if that happens, then we'll just have to go back to the drawing board and we'll have to readjust. But right now, I would say that all of the MVVS teachers are extremely flexible. They're willing to do whatever it takes to do what's best for kids. So we'll make it work.
Awesome. And Adam, the next question is actually for you in terms of the flexibility. So if we're doing the segmentation throughout the year and we're going to do 10 segments and maybe some shorter ones at the beginning part of the year, whether it be for Anna or Mike at the high school, how flexible are we going to need to make these plans when we introduce a new decision at the parent level or at the student level or even at the staff level 10 times throughout the year?
Well, as I've said, it's going to be an act of faith on our part that the numbers will work out. And initial feedback from survey data says that we're pretty close. 70% of parents feel about the same way as about 70% of our staff, roughly. So it's not going to be perfect, but it's not bad. And the biggest concern from our staff was the elementary mask, lack of mask at the elementary level. So I think even more of our elementary faculty at Clark Wilkins might even feel better. So short answer is I really don't know. We're going to have to be very flexible in making these adjustments through the year. I'm struck by my lack of clairvoyance and wish I had a better sense of what our fall, what our winter, and our spring will look like. But the hope in our plan is that we're building a set of protocols that can allow us to adjust as the conditions change. And so we are preparing to be extremely flexible. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure I even hit your question.
Yeah, no, it does. And listening to what other districts around us are doing or implementing, I will say that our plan offers the most options and opportunities for our community. So if someone is uncomfortable doing one thing, there's another option. If someone's extremely comfortable doing it, there's an option for them. And to be honest with you, this is clearly, from my perspective, one of the best options in Southern New Hampshire from what I've read and what I've seen. So congratulations and kudos to you and your team.
Well, as another feather in the cap for this group, I will tell you that we've received a significant number of requests of parents in other communities, particularly one to the north, asking to tuition their students into our school system based on our plan. So we're somewhat reticent to accept people from other towns at this time, but there are school choice statutes in the state as well that we have to be mindful of. But I think we're on the right track. Thank you for that. Shannon Gascoyne and then George Craven.
Just like Stephen and Amy said, thank you so much to our administrators for the detailed presentations today. I know that parents were kind of on the edge of their seats, along with probably teachers and students as well, who were looking forward to getting a lot of those details. I think the video ideas for pickup and drop off, particularly at the elementary school, will be huge. I love it. I would love to see something like that at AMS as well, because I think that's probably going to be a pick up and drop off challenge. I did have a question that it came up during the meetings. I didn't put it on the slide, but I was reminded of it during Dr. Bernasconi's presentation. So particularly at AMS, where students are in-person option, students are ideally going to be with the same cohort of kids all day. Parents were raising some questions over, if they get moving with that cohort and it's just not the right mix of students, is there some flexibility built into the plan for that? And I think you touched on it briefly, but I just wanted some clarification.
Yep. So we know that particularly at the middle school level, there's all kinds of different social dynamics, and really we feel like mixing our kids is a best practice. So we're trying to make sure that we design to be a little bit more restrictive at first with the possibility of opening up. The beautiful thing about us going segment by segment is that we can pivot and adjust throughout the year. So if it's not the right mix for a student, because we're trying to make sure that our students we're looking at them across the grade level and our teacher teams, we'll have the ability for some flexibility within that to make sure that we're doing right by our kids. It's going to be a dynamic process. We're going to need some patience as we go through it, because there's a lot of logistics to making those moves. But ultimately, I think that the segment design allows us to make those shifts in a very natural way, and also in a way that really allows us for some flexible groupings going forward as the situations warrant us being able to do those mixes. It'll be a little bit less mixing in 5th and 6th, a little bit more probably in 7th and 8th. We want to make sure also to be careful not to create special education classrooms, right? We want to make sure that our classes are still heterogeneous in nature and that all students have the ability to have access to different learning opportunities. But we're going to look to be a little bit more restrictive in that mixing initially and adjust as we go forward.
Super, thank you. Well, I love it. Great job. And I especially appreciate that growth opportunities were also mentioned by all of you, in addition to the folks, the students who may need some time to catch up. It was definitely mentioned in parent groups as well, that they want to make certain that their students who are ready to stretch and grow are still provided those opportunities and not held back. So that's awesome. Thanks, guys.
Questions from Georgia Craven and Delaney Fox, two aspiring seniors that have some hope of graduating in another year, but I'm not sure that's going to happen yet. Georgia.
Yeah, that's a bold statement. I'm not sure. But first off, I just wanted to say I'm very impressed with all the hard work and that you guys were able to pull all this off so quickly. I know I could not do that. So my first reaction to the high school plan was that obviously I'm a little sad that we won't have a normal school year, but also as an incoming senior in high school, I'm more than able to put my wants behind me and focus on everybody's needs and the health of our students and staff. That's clearly the most important thing. So I think that this plan is a great way of doing that, because it gets us inside the building, but also keeps us at a safe distance and gives everybody the opportunity to choose, which obviously we all want that. The one thing that I think this might take a toll on our school culture, but I think that any plan during this time would do so, because Beacon's a very open place. The one thing that I think that got me the most was that we can't congregate in the hallways or collaborative spaces, because that's one of the biggest things, Sauhegan, biggest way that we learn is kind of outside of the classroom, not the typical way of learning. But I just had a couple of questions. For upperclassmen, is off campus during free periods going to be allowed, like that you can go off and then come back on? Or is it going to be that like we just come in when our first classes and then stay for the rest of the day? No, I can't hear.
Mike, go ahead and answer that if you can.
I feel like, Georgia, you're trying to bait me. Like early in the summer, you're trying to get me to commit to something, so the seniors are going to hold me to it. But no, I think the plan is to be able to come and go. So if you have a class and then you can, have a couple periods off, and you have another class you want to come back to. We're going to talk about what that looks like in the systems around that, so we can keep people safe and keep them, tracked throughout the day. And there's some technology we can incorporate with that, but there will be some new routines that are going to have to go along with that. But, coming and going as people need, and there's going to be a lot of trust and faith put into upperclassmen to manage themselves, and that will allow us to keep the appropriate number of people on campus. So that's a conversation that we'll be having.
Mm-hmm. And then I just had a couple questions. One, a lot of kids eat breakfast at school, and I think we only talked about what lunch is going to look like. But I know that a lot of kids rely on school to have their breakfast provided by school and stuff like that. So I was just wondering how that might work, like eating anytime that isn't lunch, pretty much is what I'm asking about. And then also if there'd be an opportunity for kids to eat outdoors rather than just in the same classroom every day. If we're doing outside anyway for mask breaks, I feel like there should be an opportunity to eat outside. I don't know if there's some risk with that, but that's it. You don't have to answer those now if you don't have an answer. But.
We don't have all the details, but those are points that have come up in conversation, and we'll get more information out as we get closer to the parent and student information night, and then students will likely be involved in some of the conversations on what's going to work best and actually be something we can implement and sustain.
Thank you.
Thanks, Georgia. Delaney.
I just want to echo everything that everyone's been saying about how impressed I am with all the work that's been done, and just everything in general that this committee's done and all the plans and all that stuff. I definitely think that the high school schedule looks very good. I think that a lot of the students will enjoy having the Wednesday built-in Orange Day. A lot of us liked the Flex Day in the spring, and so I think that everyone will definitely like that. I have one question about if there have been any announcements or news, either from the NHIA or just in general, about what sports will look like in the fall. I'm not sure if anyone knows how to answer that, but just thought I'd pose it to see.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I'm going to be pretty non-committal on that. I know the intent is to have some sort of fall season, and I am definitely kind of being safe, and I know people want to make that happen, and athletes are training across the state to prepare for fall, but we still are waiting for guidance from the NHIA on that, and that's kind of where we're at currently.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the group? Dr. LaBranch. Let me unmute you, Dr. LaBranch. There you go.
Yeah, not a question, but observations. And again, I will repeat much of the platitudes that have already been laid upon the various leadership people in the school district and the excellent work they and their committees have done. I'm particularly impressed with the fact that most of them have provided a plan that is flexible. And as I've said to you privately and otherwise, one of the most important things we need to be doing, I think, during this time is to be flexible, and we need to be nimble. We need to be able to react very quickly to data points and to circumstances as they change without totally losing the student growth that has been so aptly described here as being a preeminent goal on what the leadership intends to focus on during this coming year. And I think that the details that have been shared even right now are extremely impressive, given my knowledge of surrounding school districts and where they are at in this process at this point in time. And obviously, I know that Mike in particular has got being a former high school principal, has got some unique challenges yet ahead of him, as both the questions that Delaney and Georgia have placed before him are going to be ongoing dynamic issues that secondary students, high school students are always concerned about. But I'm sure that this will be a senior year, Delaney and Georgia, that will be one that you will look back on fondly, and it will be able to be the success that you hoped it could be.
Thank you, Dr. LaBranch. Much appreciated. Shannon Gascoyne, you had your hand up. Are you all set?
Quick question. I just want to make sure I'm reading the plan correctly. Is the decision date for the threat level for the first segment of school still planned to be 8/17? I'm just thinking about in terms of the parent perspective of helping, especially the younger kids get ready to for wearing masks and the new changes, especially when some have been in summer camps that may have looked differently, how much time they have for that. So is that the correct date, 8/17?
Well, so actually our group talked about this today, actually. We think that's too late for our staff to be telling us what their plans are officially. We've already gotten, preliminary information, but we've not gotten, we're not holding anybody to that quite yet. And so we're thinking about August 10th being the date that we determine what that first status will be for the first segment of the school year. My concern is the lead time from August 10th to August 31st, knowing how quickly conditions can change. But for right now, I think we need to assume we're going to be in the yellow status to start the year. I don't see there being any scenario where we start in the green or the blue status. I suppose it's possible we could end up in the orange by then, and I'm hoping that's not the case. Like everybody else involved, I'm watching the data closely, in particular New Hampshire's data, which still looks pretty good for right now. And that's a primary determining factor for how we decide that. But we're looking at August 10th as a potential date to move that up so that parents and staff have a little bit more time to make the decision and we have more time to plan.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. With that, I don't see anyone else waving at me or raising their hand. I think we'll switch to the Q&A in our last 10 minutes or so before we have to call our meeting for the night. So one unanswered question so far is, without staggered start, there could be 70% of students in buildings all day. Will the physical plan support social distancing and safety protocols in a 5-day-per-week model? As I've said all along, our classrooms are not built for full social distancing. It's not going to be possible within our classrooms. And so masks are going to be what we use as a primary strategy. And then second is ventilation, as I mentioned before, and Roger Preston's work between now and then to see what interim steps can be done to improve outside air ventilation especially as we approach parts of the year where we plan to close windows and prevent outside air from coming in. So staggered start, we think, is ameliorated by how we're segmenting our students and limiting the amount of mixing they're doing. So we think it's having the same effect as our staggered start. And so we think there's no longer a need, and it doesn't get us anything as we thought it would before, because students are not going to be exposed to any more students than they would have been had we had a staggered start. There were 38 questions that were answered by various people during the session. If you're not in the Zoom, I guess you can't see those. So I'm not sure if I should go over any of them, but if there's any final questions, another one came in here, let's see. At this point, students at Sauhegan have begun summer work for AP classes. When do you anticipate sharing schedules with kids so they know if they will be able to go forward with taking these classes? Jolene, do you want to answer that one, or should I give it to Mike? I'm just teasing Jolene. Mike, can you answer that one?
Yeah, as of right now, we plan on running our AP classes in the fall. And so the work for the summer should continue. And if anything changes, we look to have, that kind of sorted out in the very near future, but we do not anticipate not running advanced placement classes.
Shannon.
Sorry to jump in there. I just want to piggyback on that. That was something that was mentioned numerous times in our subgroup, the concern for the students who have been working really diligently in their AP courses. So.
Yeah, we're very much aware of the work and time that's been put into the courses already by the teaching staff and the students, and we think we have a system in place which will allow us to have those classes continue on for the school year, and we're going to move forward with that. But as I mentioned in an email blast that was sent out, the schedules could look a little bit different overall when the classes run, but we look to have those classes in the schedule, and so people should plan on that as well. And then at the end of the day, we're going to do our best to accommodate as many students as possible and make this school year work in a very individualized and personalized manner for students. And things that are happening this year, I should say that it might not happen next year in 21-22. So there's a disclaimer with some of the things that we're doing to make it work for kids. And we really want to make it work, and we're going to go above and beyond to make sure that they have the best year that they can have, and that they have an experience that still makes them really marketable on their transcripts when they decide to move on to the next phase of their life, and so they can use the school to get where they want to go.
All right, Amy Facey.
Yes, sorry to barrage you, Mike, but do you or Adam, do you have any more information on SAT testing? Have you gotten any updates on that?
Yes. Yep. We will be running SAT for seniors. I believe the date's September something. The seniors will have SATs in September. I want to say the 23rd. And then we will be running a junior SAT in the spring. And so more information to come on that, but we will be, having the SAT for seniors, and we hope to provide some preparation for the seniors as they prepare for the SAT in September.
So is that September class, is that going to be at Sauhegan?
Yes, we are hoping to have the seniors on campus to take the SAT.
Okay.
In September.
And is that being paid by the district?
I don't know, I'm new. Does this district pay for the SAT here?
We do in the spring, because that's our statewide testing for the juniors, but this is different for the seniors.
I'll find that information out.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't help more.
In the email that we got from Karen, it said that there's no cost to students.
Yeah, and Karen is weighing in, letting us know that the date is September 23rd and it's state sponsored in the fall. So we're all set in terms of costs. Thank you, Karen Shininis.
Thank you. I didn't see that come through the budget, so just wondering.
And thank you, Stephanie Rund. Okay, I'm going to call it for our meeting today. So next week, it's my intention after this draft we put out tomorrow to be getting final feedback from this task force. Our goal is to wrap up and have a plan that we then move to the execution phase immediately after next week's meeting. So for our task force members, it's really important that if you have concerns with this plan, that you either have a conversation with me this week or plan to state those next week, because I'm going to be looking for a consensus of this group to move forward. I just want to thank all of you yet again, the 125 or so people that participated here, the 200 or so that were on Facebook, and the others that will watch us in the future. Thank you. Keep sending me emails. I'm getting about between 35 and 50 a day from parents and community members. And I really appreciate all of them. Each of them have helped guide. Even questions yesterday from a parent brought up some things that we dealt with today in our plans, and just know that those are really helpful. However, before I end, Kim Roberge has a question. Go ahead, Kim. Maybe Kim did not mean to raise her hand, but anyway, she's muted and not speaking. So, Kim? Okay, unfortunately, I can't hear you, Kim. So thank you all for participating. Have a great week. Anyone who's interested, our Joint Facilities Advisory Committee will meet in about 10 minutes. For the rest of you, we'll see you next week. Take care.